Hello, today is August 13th, 2021. I'm meeting today with Mr. Ken Horner at his home in Fort Collins, Colorado. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for the Northern Colorado Veterans History Project. Thanks, Ken, for sitting down today to tell your story.
Well, you're welcome, Brad.
Let's start out, if we can. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your date of birth, where you were born, a little bit about your family.
Okay, I was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, Bryan Hospital, on September 20th, 1942, to the parents of Larry and Bertus Horner. And I lived in Lincoln until I was 17, and for the first 11 years we lived in, you might call it the urban part of Lincoln, and then we moved up to acreage. My father, when I was 10, 11, bought an acreage in Lincoln and rented it out, and what a place for a kid to grow up.
Oh, yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Oh my gosh, we had cattle out there and hogs and chickens and all on leased property that my dad leased back, that he purchased from the owner, you know. And I just, lots of memories right there.
Oh, wow.
You
Wow.
know.
Any siblings?
I have, thank you, Brad. I've got a brother who is also a Marine. He's a younger brother, born in 50. And then I have a sister, two younger sisters. Eloise lives in Oklahoma, and she's 77, so she was born in 43. And then a younger sister that was born in 49, I believe. Something like that.
So you're the oldest?
Anyway, I'm the oldest.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm the oldest. My dad had a family during World War II, and he was 4F. And when the war was getting pretty close to its conclusion, they drafted him.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, they drafted him in 45, and he never said this, but I think he was getting ready for the invasion of Japan.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because America needed all the manpower they could get.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? So I call my younger brother and sister atom bomb babies.
Okay, yeah, right.
Because if it wasn't for the atom bomb, they may not even exist, you know?
Right.
But we had, so it was like two separate families. And I'm probably closer with my younger siblings now than I was when I was growing up. Because I was 17 when I joined the Marine Corps.
Okay.
Right out of high school in July of 1960.
Now, of all the various branches, how did you come to choose the Marines?
Well, to be honest with you, I went to the Army. They wouldn't want me. They didn't want me. Navy didn't want me. Marine Corps gave me a chance.
Oh, really, huh?
It's kind of crazy, you know, how all that happened. Those recruiters, I had a good talk with them, and they were upfront. They were real. You know, they didn't try to put on any, to me anyway, any false front, which I call. And I just enjoyed their company, and they accepted me. So I wanted to go in for two reasons. One, to travel.
Yeah.
And then my mom's brother, her youngest brother, was 17 when he went in the Navy in 41. And I was named after him. His name was Kenneth McMahon. Even my middle name's named after him. And he fought in the Battle of Coral Sea. He was on the USS Hammond, and he fought in the Battle of Midway, and he died in the Battle of Midway.
Oh, wow. Wow.
At 17. So I wanted to honor him some way, you know. I got his records from St. Louis, and he was caught in a mine explosion in the water. The initial torpedo, his ship was helping Yorktown,
Yeah, okay.
You evacuate, if you know the Midway story. Evacuate, and the draft on the Yorktown was so high, the torpedo was set so low, went underneath the ship, and then hit the destroyer, and split it in two. And they were trying to disarm, the mines. So it didn't happen. They didn't get them all disarmed. So I'm sure he probably wasn't the only one. But he lasted 5 days on board ship, 5 days in Hawaii. And he's buried in the Punch Bowl in Honolulu, A711. So I've been there many times to see it, and back to Hawaii. So he was my mentor for many things to keep me going and all that. And then travel. I wanted to travel.
Yeah.
Yeah. All my life, I wanted to see the world. I think that's a good education. And when I was a kid, I used to have a world map on the wall. And I had these stick pins. And Reader's Digest, remember the old Reader's Digest? You used to have those little postcards. It says, "Come and see my country. Just check this box and we'll send you information about my country." So I used to do that as a hobby, as a kid growing up. And I get all this mail, and I put a stick pin on the map here, for the mail that I got back, returned. And most every country would respond, So I had an itchy foot. I say I had an itchy foot even in my younger years, And my folks would take us on vacations a lot too. So to see America, but not overseas.
Yeah.
So at 17, I went in to the Corps, boot camp.
Now, how soon after you enlisted did you ship off then? Was there a gap, or almost right away? Or
Well, you get into boot camp in July, and I got out of boot camp for Christmas. Went home for leave, and then went back to San Diego Sea School. So while I was in boot camp, they asked for volunteers. Anybody interested in what they call a sea school? And I said, sure, I get a chance to travel. I don't want to sit around Camp Pendleton, or Okinawa or someplace like that, So I signed up for it. And before boot camp was over, they said, well, here's your duty station. Here's your next schooling. And it's a sea school down in San Diego. If you've ever been to San Diego, there's a Navy, well, there used to be the Navy recruit depot there too. It's not anymore. So I went through about, 5 weeks? I don't remember exactly how long. But we did take a destroyer out into the ocean, to get the feel of the water in the ocean and that.
And how was that for this Nebraska boy going to sea? Did you?
I had no problem.
Oh, really? Huh?
I was really surprised. I had good sea legs, and all my time at sea, and even cruises in the Caribbean and things like that, I've never gotten seasick. And I've been in some pretty terrible storms.
Bet. We'll have to get to those.
But I went through that for about, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks. Not sure.
Well, let me back up to taking off to boot camp. How was that transition going from civilian life into military life, compounded by the fact that you went into the Marines? How was that transition for you?
Well, that's a good question. I look forward to it.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah. The Corps is all enlisted back then.
Yeah.
There was no, not enlisted, volunteer.
Yeah, right.
It was all volunteer. There's no draftees in it. So I was looking forward to it. Physically, I was in good shape. Physically. Mentally, that did me in. There were a couple of things that just pretty much broke me.
Well, I've heard so many Marines that have told me that boot camp, they break you down to a puddle of clay and then remold you.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's a good description. But it's the mental part. I could put up with the rest of it. Good food, good exercise, not an issue. But when them DIs get in your face, and I got in trouble one time for not riding home. So I ended up seeing some officer of the day, and he didn't give me. He gave me an order: you ride home. You tell him how it's going. You know. I don't know why I did that nowadays, but I did. But boot camp was, in a way, kind of fun, except for that mental part.
Yeah.
You know? And in fact, what was it? Back in 2020, I went to a boot camp graduation in San Diego. 52 years from the date I graduated. And I have to do that math again, but anyway, somewhere in there. You know, just watched the graduation ceremony with my wife. But and Camp Pendleton, you know, we spent at the rifle range up Camp Pendleton, or Camp Matthews, I believe. We were the last platoon, I believe, to go to Camp Matthews for 4 or 5 weeks, I think it was, for rifle range. And I was pretty happy. I got an expert marksman with my rifle. Yeah, I've never shot a rifle or anything. I threw a lot of rocks and other things, but I never shot a... Oh, I did have a BB gun, that's right. I did have a BB gun growing up. But anyway, but I couldn't shoot that pistol for the life of me. They have it staked out to a target, you know. And every damn time I'd like this and I'd shoot the stake out from underneath the target, you know. So it only had one stake. It was, you know, couldn't get that for life. But I did it good enough to get a marksman badge. And then I got one leave in boot camp, and I had an aunt and uncle in La Mirada, California, the Hoppics. And I went up to visit them, and one of their sons was in the Air Force boot camp. So we just met and hooped and hollered for a nice long weekend, you know, and went back. And one time I remember getting down to Tijuana, but I don't remember when, probably doing C school, you know. But it's a life-altering moment. All those 4 years. I can't imagine what life would have been without.
Wow, that's interesting.
Those 4 years.
Yeah.
You know, may not have been very good, but, you know, I think about that every once in a while.
Now, just to clarify for those that are watching this tape, and actually for me, C school is for the Marines that are positioned on Navy ships.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get into that.
Okay. Yeah. Right, sorry.
If I can go to that part right now.
If you, however you want it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, of all things, the Marines back in those days on battleships, heavy cruisers, and aircraft carriers, there was a ship's detachment, you know, on there, mainly for brig duties. They had bombs, atomic bombs on those ships, or on the carrier anyway, back in the 60s.
Wow. Oh.
They had orderly duties, okay, for the XO and the captain of the ship. So I got on, I don't know, just the luck of the Irish, I guess. I got on the USS Midway.
Wow.
The ship named for the battle that my uncle was killed.
Yeah, right.
How ironic can that be? I mean, my jaw just dropped when they told me that.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
And I was, they were stationed at a Alameda Naval Air Station in San Francisco Bay. I got up there in February of '61, and the ship, I believe, was in dry dock then. No, wasn't in dry dock then. But anyway, got there in February '61, shipped out in March of '61 for Westpac. And we generally went to 6 to 8 month cruises, and I was on it for 2 cruises, 61, 62, and I got the cruise books here we'll look at later. That was an eye-opener for my Midwestern. You know, we went to Hawaii first, ORI, Operational Readiness Inspection, and about 10 days of war games before you ship out for the Far East. So the first port was Guam, and it was my duty, so I never got on the island at all. But I helped a lot of drunken sailors and Marines get back on the ship after a so-called softball game, you know. And then the next port was Hong Kong, and I got up to let's see, was that? I was over in Hong Kong twice. I think the first time a typhoon hit, and a Marine friend, had bought a suit and boots and all the get up from a tailor in Hong Kong, Chinese tailor. So we couldn't get back to the ship because the bay was too rough and the launches wouldn't take us back. So we gave him all of our money except for enough for cab back to the pier, and we went over to his tailor's, and he put us up for the night. And we gave him the money we had, you know, and so we got a couple of bottles. There was about 8 of us. There's quite a few of us, about 8 of us.
Yeah.
So they gave us each 2 bottles of beer, and we got 2 bottles of whiskey, a couple big bowls of chicken fried rice, and a couple decks of cards, and we played cards till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning while the wind was blowing and raining like crazy outside. And all we had was about the length of my hallway there. They put down some bamboo mats, you know, and had a couch on one end and that, and we just slept there. And a lot of stories about that, but I'm not going to get into that. No, we had quite a time. And we got back to the ship, and our next port was Yokosuka, Japan. And Yokosuka, Japan is our home port overseas. And we couldn't go into the dock in Yokosuka when we were scheduled to, because communists were not rioting, but protesting, because they knew we had nukes on. You know? So we, about 3-4 days later, we finally got to the dock into Yokosuka. And we were in and out of Yokosuka a lot. But the first cruise, we hit basically the same ports we hit in the second cruise. Some of the folks, and maybe you remember or heard of Iwakuni, Japan. It's a Marine Air Base. I believe it's north of Tokyo. And Sasebo, Japan, we got there. I believe Kobe. And there was one other one. Can't recall right offhand. But that cruise went up to Tokyo, took a train up to Tokyo, saw the Tokyo Tower and the Emperor Hirohito's walled castle and all that, and had a great time. Then we went to an Air Force whatever the Air Force calls the resort areas that they go send their people.
Kind of an R&R place.
Yeah, an R&R. Yeah, thank you. In Hokkaido, I believe it was. Then Okinawa. Not all of these is in sequence.
Yeah.
And then we got down to Subic Bay, Philippines, and took a tour down to Manila. And that was the first cruise. I took a lot of cruises a lot of tours, ship tours on the first cruise. And the 3 probably most impressive were Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Oh, right.
I got to both of those places, saw the museums and the monuments, and you got to see it to understand the power of atomic weapons, you know. And Tokyo. I like Tokyo. At Subic Bay, We had some parties on Kubi Point, I believe is the name of the island, where most of the sailors and Marines and the ships, docked in that. And Manila was a nice town, but Olongapo was probably the dirtiest town I've ever been in.
Yeah,
Oh
I think I've heard that, yeah.
Oh my gracious sakes alive. But anyway, then in 62, well, yeah, I'm going to say it anyway. 61, I had a girl, for that cruise, back in Nebraska. And so I mind my P's and Q's, so to speak, and did all the tours and stuff like that. In 62, I got my Dear John letter.
Oh boy.
I had a ring in one hand. I had her letter in the other hand. I just bought a ring, off the ship. The ship's commissary. And, but anyway, so I just kind of, second cruise, drank too much and all that good stuff. Well, not good stuff, but kind of lost it in a way. But regained my poise. I had to, because on the first cruise, I was on board for about 3 months or so, 4 months, and the captain's orderly got killed. He had gone home and bought a car, and he wrapped it around a telephone pole in San Francisco, killed himself, and injured another Marine. So they gave me that job. So I was the orderly for the captain of the ship for about 20 months.
And what were some of the duties of that? Kind of describe.
Just be there.
Just be there, yeah.
And do what he wanted me to do.
Okay.
Basically for security. I carried a 45. Just had one round. Not in a chamber, but in a magazine. And in your military, what do they call it? Modified blues, dress blues, uniform. Did whatever he wanted. Go get the XO. Drove him in Japan. Drove him in California. I served duty for 3 captains. His whole tour. And of all things, the ship's captains are ex-Navy pilots. And they serve only about 9 or 10 months on the ship. One cruise. That's all they do. So I got on the tail end of one captain and on the front end of another captain, and then Captain Doucet was the one I served for the whole tour. And he was probably the most level-headed one in my opinion.
Yeah.
Of the 3. I hope names are not going to. Well, anyway. So I was pretty honored to get that.
Oh, absolutely.
Job.
Yeah.
Drove him around the Bay Area. Drove him around Japan, Kamakura, Yokosuka area, and that. Didn't drive him in Hong Kong or anything like that, but just basically being there at his service, whatever he wanted. And it was 24 hours on, 24 hours off. There's just 2 of us. So it wasn't too bad of a job.
Yeah. I think you were privy to a lot of information, too, that normally...
yeah. Oh, I was up there on the bridge all the time,
Yeah.
When we were at sea, watch all the flight operations and things like that. Landings and takeoffs, and daytime, nighttime, But sometimes he'd forget about you. And you couldn't leave until he dismissed you. So you're up there for 24 hours. That didn't happen very often, but it happened occasionally. So they were good people, especially Captain Doucet.
Wow.
And I've tried to make a contact with him through the Midway, but I haven't been able to. So respect that privacy, you know?
Yeah.
And he's probably in his 90s if he's still around, right now. But what else?
What was life like on the carrier when you're just daily life on a carrier? I guess.
We get up bright and early and do our PT, and when we weren't on duty, we'd have classes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Sometimes we go out and shoot off the flight deck if there's no flight operations. We had a responsibility of a 5-inch gun mount that was on the carrier. So we do practices in there and just get orientated and things like that. Then we try to organize a landing company with sailors. So the Marines were fire team leaders, if you understand the organization of a Marine company. And so we each had 3 sailors with rifles that supposedly were trained, but weren't really. Didn't have time to, because they were busy, and most of them, I think, were bosun mates, So that was some of the things we did. And we weren't air conditioned on the ship.
You weren't?
No air conditioning.
Really?
Just the pilots. And so we were in the South China Sea quite often, and it got hotter.
Oh, can't imagine.
Because of who we were mid-deck, third deck, about third or fourth deck down, right above the boilers.
Oh, jeez.
And they come around with these little thermometers, wet and dry thermometers, with that little fan, blowing across it. And you watch it go up to 130 degrees. They finally figured out how to get some more fresh air in our area, because most of the living quarters are not above the boilers.
Oh, yeah.
But and they told us, you get out of the rack in the morning, don't jump on the floor barefooted. You be sure you have your sandals on. We had this one guy. He did it.
Jeez.
He was on the third rack. He jumped down and whee! But and then one time, I was telling you, we had a company of Marines and sailors, and we were over there in '62, I believe it was, in the South China Sea, and they had us all geared up and ready for combat. They even had helicopters on the flight deck. I'm not telling anything out of school, I don't think. But it's '62, and we were ready to go to. I've come to find out later through another Marine friend of mine who was actually in Cambodia in '62.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I'm pretty sure we were there preparing to go help them out, whatever problems they were having or combat they were in. They needed some assistance, but we didn't go. The helicopters took off without us.
Wow. Left
without us. So that was a little thrilling and nerve-wracking there for a while.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know these sailors at all.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And you got to build some camaraderie and things like that in a combat situation. There's just no question about it. So we didn't go, but that was probably one of the most exciting times. The other exciting time was when you go back to the States, you take the north route from Yokosuka to San Francisco, up around the Aleutians and that. Well, we got in the middle of a developing typhoon up in the Aleutians. And you see these old World War II movies like Victory at Sea and that. Remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Carriers going like this, and waves washing down the flight deck and that. Well, we spent about 3 days in one of those. Well, maybe 2 days. And steaming back towards Japan to get out of that typhoon. Because it was headed for the West Coast. And I swear that bubble on that ship went 30 degrees side to side, 25 to 30 degrees. It just beat up the sides of the ship and that, and waves down the flight deck. I think we lost a few planes before we got them all in the hangar bay and that, That was a pretty thrilling ride. Never got seasick. I was surprised.
That's amazing.
There was some old salts that just couldn't handle that one either, you know. So that was quite a story, quite a trip. Many other stories about over there, but you know, I don't know how much you want me to get into.
Well, this is for you. So you let loose. I mean, I've got 10 hours of tape here, so if we.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I did like Hong Kong. When I did the tour of Hong Kong, Aberdeen Bay is where they have a lot of Chinese junks, and people live their lives on these junks. You know, and I got to see that. And there's a famous restaurant on a boat out there in Aberdeen. Had a chance to have a drink on that. Then they used to have, and I think they still do, a tramway that goes up to the top of Hong Kong, to Victoria's Peak, I believe they call it. And I got a chance to go up there and look around, and went back on the back side of Hong Kong, and there's a beach there. Can't remember the name of it though. Got it somewhere. They even have a couple pictures of me in Hong Kong that I liked so much. I just made because I usually took my pictures with slides.
Okay. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And
then you have to have them developed into regular 5x8 pictures. But anyway, I liked Hong Kong. Kowloon. You can't believe all of the buildings, apartment buildings that the British built for the refugees. I mean, blocks and blocks. One building, blocks long, probably 6 to 8 stories tall, and just people crammed in them. And businesses down in the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't smoke a whole lot until I got the second year in the service, and I bought a pack of Lucky Strikes in one of those little shops below the apartments. I think they were World War II.
Oh, jeez.
Took a puff on it. Tobacco was so dry I burnt my lip. It was terrible. But took the tour and got up to the top of a Kowloon, and you could look down at the bamboo curtain, which was just not chicken wire, not hog wire. I forgot what type of fencing they call it. Then it had about 4 strands of barbed wire on top of it. That was it. You know. I wouldn't mind going back to Hong Kong, but it's just too long of a flight.
Yeah.
For me anymore. You know, I go back to Europe, but crossing the Pacific, even on a plane these days, is just too much. What else we got going on?
Well, now during that time we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. Were you guys put on any sort of alert during that time period, or?
Well, that typhoon I was telling you about, it banged up the ship so bad we couldn't go.
Oh, is that right?
They wanted us. Yeah, they said that they were looking for as much naval power as possible. You know, and we'd go around the Terra de Fuego,
Down in South America.
South America down, but no, the typhoon beat us up too bad. Sponsor decks and flight deck and other things that I'm not privy to. You know?
Yeah.
So we just stayed in dry dock. He put us in dry dock for a while to get us ready for our next cruise, because that was in '61. Or no, that was '62, wasn't it? Yeah, that was '62. Then I got off the ship in February '63, and because I signed a 4-year enlistment, I scheduled not to get out till June 5th of '64. So I went to the infantry battalion in Camp Pendleton and spent my last 15 months there, just playing war games. Most memorable there was leave, you know, back to Lincoln, and also some liberties to my aunt and uncle up in La Mirada with my cousin that was in the Air Force. And we'd spend some time on San Clemente Beach and Oceanside and places like that. and visit some places in the LA area, thanks to my cousin. I do remember September '63. We had a big fuel problem, huge fuel problem, and war games, basically, And it got so blazing hot that people were dropping like flies from heat exhaustion and sunstroke. And the helicopters couldn't even keep up with them, taking the guys to main side to get them rehydrated and feeling better. So I just about became one of those casualties, but I didn't. I remember we were on the military crest of this one hill, and the company had stopped, and I sat down and my knees between my legs because I didn't want to pass out. And the old sergeant comes up to me and says, "Dig a foxhole." And I looked up at him, took my head between my legs and looked up at him, and he says, "Forget it." He didn't want me to become another casualty. Because I was right on that brink,
Wow.
He fed me a salt tablet, which helps. It did that time anyway. So they shut down the project, the field problem, because it was just too hot. It was in the hundreds.
Oh, man.
You think it's hot there now? I remember that very well because I was so close to passing out and running around in those hills playing war games. But I got out in June 5th of '64.
Well, now, was there any thought of making it a career, or you just wanted to do your 4 years?
Well, I talked to him about embassy duty.
Oh.
I wanted to do embassy duty, but they didn't. They couldn't guarantee the school. So I said, "Okay, I'm done. That's what I'd like to do is take I don't remember how many weeks of training, additional training would have been, and I said I'm done. Okay, signed the papers. In the battalion I was training with, they shipped out for Vietnam in April of '64.
Oh, jeez.
And you got to have 90 days left on your enlistment, And I didn't have 90 days remaining. I had about 2 months, remaining. So they sent me back to main side, Camp Pendleton, for guard duty for a couple of months. And I got out, and I always kind of wondered what happened to a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
I was with them for about 13 months, a little over a year, in our training and that. But I don't know. It was what happened to any of them because I never kept track of them. Then I got out and went to University of Nebraska, summer school. And what I didn't do, and I should have realized that the Marine recruiters were a hell of a lot smarter than me, because they says, "Well, you can get out for summer school. We can do that for you. But that doesn't mean you have to do it." And I says, get out of the military and go to summer school. That shouldn't be a big deal. Well, it was. And I never managed to finish even a semester or a quarter of the summer school at UNL. But back in '64, believe it or not, we were already baby killers. And they find out that you're a military man,
Wow.
They don't accept you. And these kids are 18, 19. I'm 21, and I've probably seen and done more than they've done. They'll do in a whole lifetime.
Right.
So I got to drinking and partying and stuff like that a little too much. Dropped out of school.
Well, I guess maybe I can inject this question I always like to ask in relationship to the question I asked earlier. How was that transition going from military back into civilian life? Was that part of it, or just?
But I'm sure that was part
Yeah.
of it. Yeah, I'm sure that was part of it. The regimentation's not there.
Yeah. Right.
You got the freedom to do
Yeah.
what you want to do. Plus the somewhat rejection of the system.
Right.
They didn't have the military programs in universities like they do today, for veterans.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So, and my another tug was my sister and her husband. They were managing a boathouse on a lake close to Lincoln. So that kind of interfered with my
Sure.
schoolwork and things like that, to be honest about it,
Yeah.
It wasn't all the university's fault. It was a sense of freedom, too, of getting out. So at the same time, after I give up school, I was working for a dairy, a local dairy in Lincoln, before I went in the military, and I went there and asked him for a job, and so in the fall, August of '64, I went to work and tried a few classes at the university while I was doing that. That didn't work. So after I got the job, I was feeling pretty free. I was also blessed that my folks accepted me back, and they had just remodeled their basement, so I had an extra bedroom and shower down there. So I probably lived with them for a couple of years until I got my head screwed back on a little bit better. But in the meantime, while working for the dairy, the owner of the dairy somehow made contact with this owner of a cheese factory in Germany. And he had a son that he wanted to complete an apprenticeship in America in a dairy someplace. So he sent his son over with his wife. And I got to know him real well because I worked with him up there in the manufacturing part. And I says, I was still single at the time. And I says, well, your dad needs some help over there? I still got that itchy foot. I got real close with him, we drank a lot of beer and ate a lot of cheese and worked pretty hard in a dairy. And so he says, sure, he'll probably put you to work. Just send him your resume and write him a letter, cover letter. So I did that. And he said, yeah, come on over. So October of '66, I rented a cabin on a merchant ship out of New Orleans.
Wow.
And took a bus from New Orleans down there. And on the bus ride down there, I met a Austrian student. And so my ship and his ship, because he was taking another merchant ship too, back to Europe. They were both a little late. So we rented a car, stayed at the Y in New Orleans, rented a car, and drove the coast from Biloxi down into the Delta. And it was we had a ball. And Canal Street and Bourbon Street and all that stuff in New Orleans. And we were both about the same age, but he was smart as a whip. He was a nuclear something with nukes. But anyway, got on the merchant ship, spent about 10 days from New Orleans to Bremerhaven, Germany. And my friend's wife's parents lived in Bremen. So stayed with them a few days. And then somebody picked me up in Bremen, took me down to central Germany to this little town of 5,500. And we put me to work with just physical labor. A lot of it was physical labor in those days, back in '66. And there were probably more Turks and Greeks that I worked with than Germans because of the labor shortage, because of the war and that. It was a gorgeous little town. I mean, my friend's son got married there in the 90s in a 12th century church right on the river. Well, and I went over there to celebrate with him. But anyway, working there was a great time. My friend came back from Lincoln, where he was working at the dairy, and he took me on some trips, sales trips, you know. So we got down to Innsbruck and the Zugspitze and Garmisch, which is a military area. And where else? We drove through Oberammergau, and he took me to a Schlachtefest. I never heard of it before. I said, well, we're going to go eat. I says, okay, sounds good. So it's just one of the employees of the cheese factory. He butchered a hog, and they were processing it, you know, pressure cooking it and all this other good stuff, and getting ready for the winter. So I sit down there and with my friend, and it's just like a picnic bench and table in the house, and we started drinking beer and just stuff that looked like sake, just white liquor, you know, of some sort. Double Corn is the brand name, but I don't know what they call it. And man, after 2 or 3 of those on the double empty stomach, you get a little looped. So they put this plate of raw pork, you know, on the table with some pickles and condiments and things like that, and plates and servings. And I said, okay, that's fine. I'll just wait till they put it on the skillet and fry it, you know. Well, it didn't happen. So my friend says, I says, well, isn't anybody going to eat? He says, yeah, they're just being polite, waiting for you to eat.
Uh-oh.
I says, well, you got to cook the pork. He says, no, it's all ready to eat. We eat it raw here. So I took the hint and got the bread, you know, and put on the pork, and I had to have something in my stomach.
Yeah.
It was getting eaten up by all the liquor. So I had some raw pork in that. And, I mean, it was a neat little town. And friendly people, because I knew the boss's son and stuff like that, you know. And I've been over there a number of times since then.
Yeah.
Visiting them. In fact, he's a very good friend. There's my friend's granddaughter right there.
Huh.
So we just had a great time. Well, that's something else. Well, I'll talk about it later. So after that, I think at the dairy, I had to work with this young lady to get my job done and her job done. And after a number of months, we started dating before I went to Europe. And apparently she was pregnant before I went over there. She knew how bad I wanted to go, you know. So I get this letter when I was over there. And so I fly back. And we got married. And JP, Justice of the Peace in Lincoln, with my sister and brother-in-law. And we spent 53 years together.
Wow.
After that. But in between, there's a lot of stories, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But that was the toughest part. I didn't know, you know. And I get this letter, and hop on a plane, come back, get married, you know. And I got back to a job at the dairy, and they put me on a wholesale delivery truck to deliver ice cream to the grocery stores. And when you have to get inside an ice cream truck to warm up, because it's so damn cold outside.
Oh, jeez.
You know, hey, this is not the job. This is not my career job.
Right.
You know, it's just not going to, I got to do something to get out of this, you know. So, 68 or 60, I think it was late 68, I went to a business school for 2 years. got an associate's degree, and got a job with Centel Corporation, which was a multi-utility. At that time, their corporate headquarters was in Lincoln, and that was in 1970. Okay, so in 1970, after school, I got a job with Centel Corporation as an auditor, and the company was a multi-utility company: water, natural gas, telephone, power company. So for the first 5 years, I traveled all around the country. From North Carolina to Dodge City, Kansas, to Pueblo, Colorado, down to Killeen, Texas, and up to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, doing various types of audits for the corporation, because I was in the corporate department. So that was my first 5 years, and in the meantime, we bought a double-wide trailer out in West Lincoln, and it was pretty close to where I worked in downtown, so the commuting wasn't too bad. So we lived in there for 6-7 years, and I sold that place as a down payment for a home at Capitol Beach Lake in Lincoln, about a block and a half off the lake. So we moved in there, and about 6 months later, the corporation offered me a job in Chicago. So I accepted it. So we lived in this house 6 months, and in January we were moving out and headed for Chicago in 76, I think it was, 75 or 76. And I couldn't get enough out of it, because I hadn't been in it long enough.
Yeah, right.
So the company bought it. Thank goodness. And we bought a home in Streamwood, Illinois, which is a suburb, northwest suburb of Chicago, up by Elgin, Illinois. And it was kind of like our mobile home, a little bit bigger, but no basement, but on a beautiful lot. And we really enjoyed that house. And in Chicago, I worked in the customer services area. And again, traveled quite a bit to various parts of the country to perform my job. Flying in and out of O'Hare a lot, which I didn't mind, because I always liked to travel.
Yeah, right.
So I spent about 5 years there and saw a tornado miss us by about 3 blocks in the building I was in. Saw a DC-10 flip over on its top and crash on takeoff out of O'Hare. And family would come out and visit, so we had kind of a little route, we'd show them. And we'd take them down to Barrington, Illinois, put them on a train, and I'd drive the car down to the train station, and we'd pick them up there, and we go to the Sears Tower, the Hancock Tower, Navy Pier, Museum of Science and Industry, Lincoln Park, Oak Beach, places showing the Chicago River and things like that, Grant Park. Just had kind of a tour thing for them, Water Tower Place. It was a fairly good but pretty nerve-wracking time. At that time, I quit smoking. Started smoking in the service probably in '62. I think it was about '76 I stopped, because smoking was making me a nervous wreck out of me. That's what it was doing to me. And back in the '70s, it was terribly smoggy in Chicago. And why breathe in more of that? I tried to quit smoking probably 6-7 times, but the change of environment, going to Chicago, did it. I finally quit cold turkey for 6th or 7th time, and it worked. It worked. developed some good friendships in Chicago. My daughters did. In the meantime, while we were in Lincoln before we moved to Chicago, we had another daughter, Corrine. Oh, and my daughter here in Fort Collins, Jackie, was born in 67, yeah, in March, and Corrine was born in October of 70, just before, well, about 5 years before we moved to Chicago. So in about 79, 80, I got an offer to move back to Lincoln. Yeah, wife wanted to go back home, and I couldn't blame her. I was kind of feeling the need to, because that environment in the Chicago area and in the corporate environment, you had people from all over the corporation, and the corporation was scattered throughout the country. So you had a lot of different personalities, culture, I can't think of the other terms, but, you know, which was kind of somewhat conflicting and somewhat pulling on my wrong strings, so to speak, you know? So it was time to go back to Lincoln, to a formal environment. So we sold our home, Streamwood, went back to the other side of the tracks in Lincoln, so to speak. When I grew up, I was on the wrong side of the tracks. When I moved back to Chicago, I told myself, I'm going to get on that other side of the tracks. So we got a really nice home that butted up to an elementary school, and lived there till 93. And during that time, I worked in the revenue department for Centel. Then I wrote procedures, accounting procedures. Wow. And then I got a job as a manager in the mailing department. So, oh, and I worked in property accounting for a number of years. Yeah. And I got a job in the mailing department, printing and inserting and mailing millions of bills a month, you know, telephone bills, just telephone bills, out of Lincoln. So that went on, and the girls in the meantime went to that elementary school. Charlene, my wife, she volunteered for the school and worked as a teacher's aide in 5th grade, I think it was, something like that. Did that for years. And then when the girls went to late junior high, I believe, she got a job with the State Department of Health as a secretary for one of the managers there. So we were doing good. We were doing good financially, and the girls were doing okay. And Jackie was in university. Corrine was getting ready to go to a Southeast Community College. No, she tried the university, then she went to Southeast Community College. And then in '92, Sprinit Corporation bought us. And they offered me a job in Florida, in Orlando. So I said, sure, I'd like to go to Florida. You know, and the wife was all for that. She looked forward to that. We were in Apopka, which is a northwest suburb of Florida. So we moved down there in '93. And on the way down, I took a few days of vacation, and we stopped by in southern Indiana to look at a homestead area. Well, they didn't call it homesteads back in those days. In 1801, 1805, somewhere in there, my ancestors from New Jersey came out to southern Indiana, put down roots. and there's all kinds of Horner graves there and that. There's either a Horner chapel up there on top of the hill. So we toured that area and talked to some relatives, long lost relatives and that. It was really interesting, it was. And then we drove on down to Apopka and reported for work, and the work was in the mailing area again. So I worked for a guy from Tennessee who I'm still friends with, and worked with a guy from Tennessee who I'm still friends with. You know, and we had some good times down there. We had various summer get-togethers down in SeaWorld or Disney World, you know, before the government kind of clamped down on these corporate parties where they couldn't spend but $5 or $25 or something like that on get-togethers and that. But we had a lot of good times, and got to Disney World a lot, you know, and SeaWorld while we were there, and naturally all the relatives came down to visit, you know.
Yeah.
And we had a nice 3-bedroom house, and I tried to encourage my wife to, let's don't leave, let's stay. So I even got her a swimming pool, fenced it in, you know, and that. And her brothers came down, her sister came down, her younger sister never made it. My brother and both sisters? I think both sisters came down. No, I don't think Eloise came. I think just Barb came down for a visit. And we do all the tourist stuff with them and that, you know. And while I was down there, Disney World was starting their running series. I don't know, you may not be aware, but back in the early 90s, they started a marathon series at Disney World. So they were asking corporate sponsors if they'd provide some people to set up tables and give water and food out and that. And so Charlene and I, we volunteered to do that for a couple of years, and then I did it later on. And I've been kind of a fitness nut since I've been 45, something like that. And I looked at these guys, and these little old ladies and these little old men, and man, they're doing a marathon or a half marathon? I can do that. So that got me on my running spree and encouraged me to get involved with that. So, like I said, that encouraged me to get involved with running. And I used to, this was in January, every year in January they had it. And I didn't do it while I lived down there that I recall, but I really started doing it when we moved to back to Kansas City, because they got offered a job there in Kansas City in 97. So I was only there about 4 or 5 years in Florida. So they moved me back to Kansas City. But while I was still in Florida, we got to Cape Canaveral. We got up to Daytona Beach and didn't see a 500, but took a tour of the, Daytona Beach and the racetrack and that. Gosh, what else we do down there? A lot that I'm missing, but I managed to get a pass from the NASA to get right as close as you can as the public, could get to watch one of the launches.
Wow.
And they didn't even scrub it. Actually get to see it. And we worked close enough to the launch site at Canaveral that you could see them from our building,
Wow.
And when they'd launched, the building kind of shut down for a few seconds, and everybody go to the windows or stand out there and watch the launch, It was quite a time. And we only lived about probably 5 miles from my work, and Charlene got an excellent job with some engineers, an engineering firm, and she worked for them for about, till we left. She, as a secretary there. had a good time. We had a good time with both jobs. I mean, the engineers know how to hoop and holler too. I learned how to do the Macarena down there. You know. Then, okay, in '97 I got a job offer in Kansas. And so we moved to Olathe, Kansas, which is a suburb of Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And I worked in Lenexa, which is not too far away, probably about 4 or 5 miles west. Beautiful 2-story house. Didn't need all the house, but I thought, I can't afford those new little ranch homes. I can afford this 2-story house. You know? So I thought, well, it's a great neighborhood. Let's buy it as an investment. And live in it. And close up the rooms we don't need. Because they had partially finished basement and all that. And I worked in the mailing area at that time, again, and we were pumping out millions and millions of paper bills every month on 6 or 7 Pitney Bowes mailing machines and 4 IBM printers. You know, if you remember the old days, we used to all get paper CenturyLink bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's similar.
Yeah.
To what I was doing back then. So Kansas City was pretty fun. We got to see some Chiefs football and Royals baseball and toured around the Old Town area, country club area. And, what else would be exciting? We were close to Lincoln, you know, right up I-29,
yeah, right.
You know, so we get home a heck of a lot more. And my wife is from Ord, Nebraska, which is north of Grand Island, about 60 miles. So we get up there got up there a lot, you know. I spend many weekends up there, and generally take a Friday or a Monday off, you know, to make it more worth our while for the trip and that. What's memorable about the Kansas City? That's probably about it in Kansas City. Well, no, it's not it. Sprint, after 33 years, offered me a buyout, along with a number of other close to retirees, you know. And a lot of people took it, you know. They were changing their health insurance and some other benefits for retirees at the time. And at the time, I was the senior in the mailing operations, and I ended up training 3 managers.
To fill your one position?
They just wanted to get some management.
Oh.
They were the up-and-coming stars
Okay.
of the corporation, so to speak, you know, and they wanted some personnel-type management skills. The corporate wanted them to get it, so they let me, and I got tired of it. and they gave me the buyout, so I said, all right, I'll take the buyout. So I took the buyout, got a 1.5 year salary with it, and all the benefits. Got my health benefits through the Sprint. Then they leased the school, Sprint did, and they set up offices for counselors, job counselors and that, and computers for us to work on resumes and that, because most of us worked 25, 30 years with the company.
Yeah. And
didn't know how to interview and didn't know how to have a resume or anything like that. So I worked on that for a number of months, and with my accounting background, I said, well, the IRS has got a big presence in the Kansas City area. So I signed up for them and got a job with the IRS for a couple of years, working in one of their offices close to the campus where I worked at, the Sprint campus. And did that for 2 years while Charlene was getting a small pension at a high school that she worked at in Spring Hill, Kansas. She was secretary down there. And because of her age and that, she could get a little pension after 10 years. So we bought a year, and she worked there 9 years. And then in '05, we came out here. And
your daughter was out here. Is that what brought you to Fort Collins?
The son-in-law got a job offer from Woodward Governor here back in 95, I think it was, So he accepted, came out here, bought home over there just off of Horsetooth and College on the west side of the tracks. And we were still in Kansas City at the time. But that's why we came out here. Yeah. I got to know I-70 extremely well. Yeah. From Olathe, Kansas to Fort Collins is 10 hours door to door, with both of us driving. So we came out in '05, bought this place, and I've been trying to get a job out here while I was in Kansas City. And I was working for the IRS, so I thought, well, I'll try the federal government. So USDA's got a big presence out here. And I interviewed with Wildlife Services, didn't get that job. I interviewed with USDA and got the job. So I started there in November '05 and worked for 12 years at the USDA, which was in the IT group. Well, no, I started in the mailing because I retired from mailing and they needed somebody in the mailing group. So I worked there for 2-3 years, and then put my application in for a administrative assistant in the IT group, which is just mainly payroll and purchasing, large purchases, small purchases, and things like that. So that was a great job. And in the meantime, my wife got a job at another school system here in Fort Collins, McGraw Elementary School, right down here off of College, and college in Harmony. So she worked there till 16. And so she got a little pension from Para too. But in the meantime, here, it's just a great job. I love that job. I mean, the other job I had with Sprinit was 55 hours a week, and just about on call any time, because I had the seniority I had. This job, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, you're done, and you leave your job at the job. Yeah. You don't bring it home with you, like I used to do all the time. And the people there were just fantastic. Managers were great. Just enjoyed it. But and in the meantime, we have the advantage of being here and watching our grandkids grow up. When we watched them play volleyball and softball and football and track, and the grandson Dylan did baseball, and he did track, and he did football. The Ashlyn did softball and volleyball till she was a senior in high school, and that volleyball was quite a game. I enjoyed watching that. It's go, go, go all the time. Them gals can get into it. And then the youngest granddaughter did volleyball and softball too. And she played softball in senior high at Fossil Creek here. All three of them graduated from Fossil Ridge High School. And now the grandson's got a job with Wix Corporation, working at home, and just moved him to Littleton, Colorado, to an apartment, living with two of his friends, and still working at home, but starting to work downtown Denver in October, I believe. 3 days a week he's hoping, 2 or 3 days a week in the office. Granddaughter just graduated from CU. In fact, just finished her last class Monday, I think it was. Yeah, so she's waiting for her diploma. So she hasn't got a job yet, but in the meantime, she's working at Columbine Center Avenue as events planner or events coordinator or something like that, and the youngest has got 2 more years at CU. So we were blessed to see all that.
Yeah, wonderful.
Well, most of it.
Yeah.
I lost my wife in February of 2020.
Oh.
We had 53 good years. But about 6 years ago, she was diagnosed with dementia. And it took her in 5 years. Last year was the toughest. So I retired from the federal government, after 12 years to take care of her the last 2 years. And I managed my daughter here, Jackie, and her husband's Kevin, and their last name's Kings. And she's been in most of her career in the elder care business as a RN, a nurse. In fact, she got her nursing degree over here at Greeley. And she just got her master's degree at Regis in nursing leadership here about a few months ago, in fact. 53 years old. Pretty proud of that lady,
Sure.
I'll tell you, And she works for Columbine Center Avenue now. And she helped me a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
With keeping my wife at home,
Yeah.
Charlene.
Yeah.
But she had the speech and the behavior part of dementia. It wasn't Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's can drag on for 10, 12 years. This took just 5. And she, the last 2 months I just couldn't handle it anymore. I found myself getting angry at her and yelling at her for things I knew she couldn't do.
Yeah.
And so we put her in one of Columbine's buildings, and she died 2 months later. And she just, the behavior portion of it, when I get some people in here to watch her while I go to the gym and work off everything, well, she'd chase them around. I mean, she even locked some of them out of the house. One lady locked herself in the bathroom, and she'd throw things at them and get unhappy in that. The ladies, when they come over, I says, hey, I don't care. Don't try to touch her. Don't try to toilet her or anything like that, or feed her. Just be safe yourself, because you might get chased at. We've tried to put things away, where if you get something thrown at you, it's going to be a soft pillow or a stuffed animal or something like that. Well, some of the ladies listened and some of them didn't. And I lost her a couple of times too. I was working out in the yard and she was out there with me, just get fresh air and get outside. And I turned around, she was gone, and I couldn't have been looking at the yard more than 60 to 90 seconds. And she used to go to we used to walk down by the railroad tracks over here, So I ran over there, she wasn't there. And man, she couldn't have gone very far. And so I hear some banging on the door. And three doors down, there's a family down there. They had 6 kids. And the parents weren't home at the time. And she liked those children. So she banged on the door, scaring the daylights out of them. Well, so after I got her and put her back in the house, and I apologized to him and told him what was going on. Yeah. But it worked out all right. But then the speech part, if you're familiar at all with dementia, takes away the ability to swallow eventually. So she just starved to death, basically. You know, in the end, ended up 87 pounds. But we were blessed again because they got her buried a week before COVID lockdown.
Oh, wow.
In Lincoln, Nebraska, in March 8th or something, somewhere in there, before the COVID lockdown. So we had a nice funeral with all the family, friends, and everything like that. So I tell people I've been blessed a lot in my life. You know, I'm really fortunate with my health, with my family. You know, my siblings. You know, George, Barb, Eloise. They're all still alive and doing well.
Now, you talked about one daughter. Talk a little bit about your other daughter.
Daughter Corrine.
Yeah.
Okay. She moved out here. Well, okay. Where should I start? When she moved out, we moved to Florida in '93, and she was going to Southeast Community College, and she was in the elementary care area, you know, for daycare and that. So she got a job after 2 years there, you know, at Southeast Community College, at a daycare at the Federal Building in Lincoln. And one of the ladies that brought her child there apparently noticed her skills and all that, and offered her a job, much better job, you know, as somewhat a career path in downtown Lincoln. So she accepted that and worked there for a number of years. I'm not sure if that was her banking years or when. But while we were in Florida, she came down to visit, and then she met this guy in a country band, and they really enjoyed each other's company. And he also had a printing business in Lincoln that he inherited from his dad. And him and his sister ran it. So did quite well, you know, with that business and with enjoying the band during the weekends and that. So they got married and was living in Lincoln. No children. He spent a lot of vacations in Hawaii. I love Hawaii, you know, and I do too. They came out here in, 12, how long have they been here, 4 years? I think it was 16 or 17, they moved to Denver. My brother-in-law sold his business because his sister was getting too bad with cancer. So he wanted to move out here to Colorado. His folks loved Colorado. So they moved out here to Denver and have been out here. And she worked for a loan processing company in Lincoln, where they have a couple thousand people, or 1,000 people working there for them. So they have some offices here. So she got a job with them here again, and has been working with them, for them, since COVID at home.
Yeah.
Working at home. And he's retired. So they've been doing well.
Good.
In fact, I should see him tomorrow. Yeah, going to load up my granddaughter to get her moved into her apartment at Boulder for her junior year at CU. Yep. So I'll see her tomorrow, as far as I know. But I guess one thing I should have mentioned too is that Charlene and I, we had a great life.
Yeah.
She was a fantastic woman.
Oh, wow.
I very seldom we have spats or anything like that. We just somehow accepted each other, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And it just worked. And I told you I had an itchy foot. We traveled all the time.
Yeah, oh, wonderful.
I mean, we probably did 6 or 7, maybe 8 cruises in the Caribbean. We did 2 Alaska cruises. Mexico, Cancun, Cozumel.
Wow.
All over the states, from Las Vegas, San Diego, to many trips to Florida, even after we lived there. Just enjoyed life.
Oh, wonderful.
And at a point in 2018, I thought, well, if we're going to do any more traveling, we better do it, because she was starting to deteriorate pretty fast. And so we did a heck of a lot of traveling in 18. We started off with a 3-week trip to Europe. And I always wanted to do a river cruise on the Viking.
Oh, I've heard about those.
Yeah, we got to Budapest, flew to Budapest, and went to Passau, Germany, which is by Munich. And got on a train to Munich for Göttingen, Germany, which is my friend's son lives in Göttingen, and he's a jeweler and does quite well for himself. So we went up there to visit him again. We'd been there before,
Right.
that I hadn't said anything about. But went to visit him again for about 3 or 4 days, and they took us around on little tours of the mountains in around that area, and their little town of about 20,000, I think, something like that. And then from there we took a train to Frankfurt, Germany. And I didn't tell you about this guy either. When I was in high school, they had a foreign exchange student there, and he was German, and I got to know him real well. We were both gymnasts. I didn't know him too much in the classroom. He was smart as a whip, a lot smarter than me. But we were both gymnasts, and we developed a real good friendship. So while I was in the military, we corresponded, and to this time we correspond. And I've been over there many times to Frankfurt and that area to visit him. And he's been over here many times. When I lived in Florida, when I lived in Kansas City, Lincoln, out here. In fact, we went up to Vista Verde Guest Ranch here in 17 for a week and had a ball. He's fun. He's my age, because it's the same class. Yeah. He'll come over for class reunions that we have in Lincoln and that. So we went in 2018 to visit him for 4 or 5 days, and he showed us around a lot of places that I've been to before, but Charlene hadn't been to. He got a gorgeous home. He was a manager for IBM Germany for a number of years before he retired. And then we flew to Dublin.
Oh.
Yeah, my mom's Irish.
Okay.
So through the genealogy, I find this cousin from Iowa that my mom's side of it, he married one of my grandma's sisters, somewhere in that side. His last name's Blakely. But the guy's got 3 PhDs. And he's an amateur genealogist. And he figured out where my great-grandpa, where they left in the 1880s to come to the States, where they raised 10 kids on 20 acres, we figure about 20 acres, because we actually got to the site.
Oh, wow.
Where the footings were to the house. We kind of looked at the footings and figured, that's probably about 750, 800 square feet. We just stayed in the area and saw some castles in the area and ate the Irish food and tried to enjoy the Irish atmosphere and that. and stayed in a converted cattle barn where there used to be a hay upstairs, and the cattle lived in below and the animals lived below. Well, they converted the upstairs into condos.
Huh.
And we stayed up there about 3 to 4 nights. Yeah. And we were in rural Ireland. You can't imagine driving on the wrong side of the street road in a Volvo in these little narrow roads, and some of the hedgerows were right up to the road, and some of the curbs, they had curbs on these highways, country highway, and I hit so damn many holes and curbs. I thought for sure I'd break an axle or something. And you're driving on the wrong side of the road, I think I mentioned that. But it was a good time. He's a great guy, I'll tell you. Blakely's his name. And I'm still in contact with him. But so we did that, and then went to Cancun in 18. What else we do in 18? San Diego again. Took her home to Ord, up to my niece's wedding and that. We get to Florida. I think, we got to Disney World. So we did probably at least 5 or 6 trips that year.
Oh, wonderful.
And there were some moments where I thought, should I have done this or not? But it worked out all right, A little extra effort on my part, not a problem. I think she left with some good memories, And then since then, since she's passed, I've been on a senior website, and I found a young lady, 11 years my junior. I call her young lady because I think she likes that. And she lives in Lakewood, and we've done a lot of travel.
Oh, good. Excellent.
I may sound hardcore, but I told her, I said, before we started dating, I said, you got to commit at least 1 week a month for a week-long trip.
Oh, wow.
Before, like I said, I've been financially I'm okay. And she said, okay, that's fine. She traveled a lot herself, So she'd been divorced once and lost one husband too, her second husband. And she's smart as a whip. I mean, nothing against my wife, but as she was declining, I couldn't communicate with her.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And all I had was my daughters.
Yeah.
And she got her master's degree in language. She taught middle school French and Spanish. So when we go down to Cancun or Puerto Vallarta or someplace like that, she talks Spanish and I just listen to her. Have fun, Usually you can make it out a little bit what they're talking about now, but she enjoys it, and that's good. We have a great time. We've been to Florida and San Diego and going to Boston in a couple of weeks for a week. Never been to Boston. That's one place on my bucket list. I got a whole whiteboard over there of bucket list places to go to, as long as I last.
Good.
In the last trip to San Diego, I did a 12K run on Coronado Island, if you've ever been to San Diego.
Wow.
You ever been down there?
Yeah.
Yeah, familiar with Coronado Island?
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah, it's over the bay, the bridge. It goes over the bay. There's a little Tidelands Park there, and you start there and run over by the SEAL team training area, come back, and then
So you're still running? These years?
I try to get 2 10Ks in a week.
Really?
Running around the neighborhoods here. Yeah. I told myself when the wife passed, I said, if I want to live this lifestyle, I gotta stay fit, and that's one way to do it. And if my legs or feet give out, then I'm gonna go swimming. I used to love to swim when I was a kid, So And that's one reason I like to travel certain places too. And when we go for a week someplace, I'll try to get out at least once, maybe twice, and just get on Google.
Wow.
You know, and and map out a route. You know. So I've said it half a dozen times already. I'll say it again. I've been blessed. I truly have, and I just trying to find that direction after Charlene.
Sure. Yeah.
You know. And maybe most people are still trying to find their direction, but it's a big change after so many years.
Sure.
And this Linda is her name, from Lakewood, a young lady I've been dating. Might be the one.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah,
You know, she's up in Oregon right now, babysitting her grandkids. Well, for 2.5 weeks. Well, her daughter, this is for posterity, Linda, I'm sorry, is a bore with her husband on a 2-week trip.
Wow. Wow.
You know, so we'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah.
We've got some plans.
Well, now you had mentioned, when you're in Ireland, you looked up your mom's side of the family.
Yeah.
Earlier, you said you wanted to talk about your dad's side of the family.
Yeah.
This might be a good segue into talking.
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Excuse me. A couple more steps on my mom's side of the family. They naturally, Kenny McMahon, the uncle that died World War II, Battle of Midway. His grandparents came from Ireland, and they settled in Iowa, southwest Iowa, Farragut, Shenandoah area, if you're familiar with that. And his grandparents, all his siblings, also moved to Canada. But all of my great-great-grandpa's kids came to America. And eventually some of his siblings came from Canada to live in America. Well, this is back in the 1880s, early 1900s.
Wow.
So with my dad's side, we're German. German-Irish, good old Northern Europe type roots. But they came over and throughout my life I've been into genealogy because I had an uncle who used to work in Chicago in the banking industry. He retired in Idaho. And in the 50s, when I was growing up, he'd drive back to Chicago to visit friends. And he'd stop at our house. He'd have these boxes full of pictures, tintypes and all that.
Wow.
And he'd tell us all about the family, you know? And it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So that kind of got me interested in genealogy. And come to find out that they came over on a Phoenix ship out of Bremen, I believe, or Rotterdam, one of the two, in 1756. And they settled in New Jersey, in the Camden area. And a bunch of Horners. There was 4 of them, 3 brothers and a cousin. And the brothers came from a little town of Hofelde in Germany. And the cousin came from Hamburg. And they all came together, got their records and all that, the manifest from the ship and stuff like that. And they settled in New Jersey. And then my side and some of the other Horners went to this town in can't remember the name, Fredericksburg, Indiana, which is down by Louisville, Kentucky. And they settled there. And then in around the early 1800s, 1801, 1805, something like that. And I got a news article from a local paper around there telling a little bit about the history of the Horner family moving there, about how they built this tavern in this boarding house, made friends with the Shawnee Indians, and all this good stuff. It's crazy, you know? So I get there and I see all these headstones. They're pretty well deteriorated in the cemetery of Horners. And they're all some of my family, but not directly related,
right.
you know. but my side then, in probably, I'm thinking after the Civil War, 70s, something like that, moved from Fredericksburg to Iowa and farmed there, and started their family. I think he had 12 kids by then, by one wife. And as I recall the story, his first wife got thrown from a horse and got killed in Iowa. Was it 12 or 13? Let's see. 3. That's 15. No, he had 14. Yeah, 14 children by her. And then he moved to Missouri for a little while. And second wife, he had 3 more children. So he took 12 of his kids and they moved to homesteaded in north central Iowa, Kansas, in Lincoln County. They call it the Post County because all the limestone there, instead of wooden fences, they have limestone fences, you know. So he finished out his family there, and they moved to Iowa, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, California, and places. That's the only places I know of that
I see where
his kids moved, you know. So he finished his life in, I think it's Ray, Kansas, with two of his daughters that stayed around, you know. And he was 89, 91, something like that, and passed away in, I don't remember.
Now this is your grandfather or great-grandfather?
Great-grandfather.
Okay.
Great-grandfather, yeah. So in the meantime, my dad and I, we go down to the old homestead, and no trespassing, all like that. It's empty. We're going to go take a look at it. So we went to take a look at it. And the original limestone cabin was there. 2 stories with a basement. You know, they homesteaded it. And they had about 6 or 7 additions on it from other families that had moved in and lived there. But it caught fire, I guess, at some time in a recent past, and from the furnace in the basement, because you could see it just came up through the living room. Beautiful place, though. I mean, and the outbuildings were in excellent shape, and we're talking about by about 2013, something like that we were there. And the owners just packed up and went to Washington. And we find this out from the neighbors, because we stopped and talked to them. I wanted to find out what the heck went on. And they did that. I mean, they packed up few belongings, because there was still food in the pantry. There was still beds and clothes in the bedrooms. There was still furniture in the main floor. The porch, he had a 3/4 wraparound porch, still had porch furniture on it. And they had a little lake right out in front.
Oh, man.
It was just, for the middle of Kansas, and he had 3 beautiful outbuildings. So come to find out years later that the owners gave it to the Kansas Conservatory to maintain. Not the whole farmstead. He sold the farmland, but the house and the buildings and that. And I've been there a couple times since then. And my great-grandpa is buried in a cemetery not too far from there, off of I-70, you know. So my grandpa, that's another story. He was raised in that area, you know, and he sold the farm, or he got a farm from his dad Wait a minute, that was great-great-grandpa we were talking about. He sold a farm. He got some money somewhere, and he bought a Chevy dealership and set up shop in a small town. And I may have my timing wrong, but he set up shop in a small town, and the damn thing burned down in a couple years. The Chevy dealership, you know, and poof. Then I think at that time he went to Nebraska Wesleyan and met his wife, my grandma. And he was going to be a doctor, I guess. And my grandma, she had 4 sisters and a brother, and all of them graduated from Nebraska Wesleyan. And smart as a whip, all of them were. And when they got married, they knew where all of great-grandpa's ancestors moved to, back in Idaho, right, Washington, so on and so forth. So when they got married, they had this Dodge 4-seater car, and they took a road trip for 2.5, 3 months to visit all of his family out there on this road trip. And my grandma kept a diary of it. And I got it right in there.
Wow.
and maps and stories about
Well, as you're telling your stories about your ancestors, I see where you got the genes for the itchy foot.
Yeah,
you know?
I didn't know. Yeah, I never thought of that. But they didn't do much traveling after this trip because my grandma's in-laws went with them for that 3 months.
That'd be enough to shut it down.
Yeah. 3 months rumbling around in the backseat of this 4-seater or 2-seater Dodge. 1915 Dodge or something, I don't remember. and there's no roads back in those days. Right. They blazed their own trail. I forgot Wyoming, because there's family up in Cody, Wyoming. And you know, Idaho and all at 3 months, and ended up going through Las Vegas and coming back through Colorado here, and back to Kansas, and then back to Lincoln. Yeah, whale of a time.
Wow.
So, yeah, I never thought of the itchy foot part. That's pretty good. That's a good way to end it. Grandpa and Grandma, I remember times pulling the little red wagon to their house, because we only lived about 5 blocks apart. And my sister was in the red wagon, and here I was pulling her over to the house, you know, over a railroad track. Oh, man, folks got... Well, anyway, more stories. I think we better quit for now. Yeah.
Well, as we start to wind down this interview, is there anything? I know we probably only got the tip of the iceberg of your life story, but is there anything I didn't ask you that you want to talk about, or anything that's kind of floated to the top of
my mind while we're talking?
Yeah. Or do you think we caught it pretty good? We caught a pretty good glimpse of your life.
More than I expected to come to mind.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I've thought about, the genealogy part a lot in my military time, which this is dedicated to, but I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks for asking.
As we wind down too, is there any closing thoughts that you want to leave to family, or advice, or just a good way to close out this interview that a message you'd like to leave the family?
Yeah, that's a good thought.
Or not, too.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I don't know why, but it seems like I've been pretty blessed in my life. I did not live it well at times, but the direction that Charlene and I took, and many times the direction that I wanted to take, wouldn't have been the right step. That I listened to her and ended up here.
Yeah.
Which was as I reflect back, the right thing to do. You know, I don't think without the grounding and the companionship and love of my wife that it wouldn't be here. You know.
Well, it sounds like there's at least two pivotal times in your life: your Marine stint
Right.
and your marriage, meaning Charlene, and
the
life
kids.
with
And the
kids.
kids.
Of course. Yeah.
And all the traveling we did during
Yeah.
work years, and the traveling we did during our marriage, I think, helped cement it. You know, because and also she just a loving person.
Mm.
She never really, that I recall, we never really had a whole lot of spats or unhappy times. You know, we just seemed to blend together. And the dementia part was tough to watch her.
Yeah, sure.
You know, because the last year, I had lost her then, you know. In that last year, I'd lost her. Just watching her deteriorate.
Oh, I think is that what they say about dementia? You lose a person twice.
Yeah. Mentally and then physically.
Yeah.
That's right. But, yeah, kids hang in there. And grandkids, Dylan, Ashley, Amber, you know, step it up. You got some genes in you that are going to kick in one of these days, if they haven't already. So I think that's the best I can leave it. Speaking directly to my grandchildren.
Very good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you, Brad, for.
I want to thank you for sitting down to tell a very fascinating story, but I also want to thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you. That's my boot camp picture in my dress blue uniform.
And that was what, 1960?
1960. This is the Platoon 272 book from the Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, from July of 60 through December 60. This is my certificate for the Sea School that I completed in January 1961 before I got on the USS Midway. The Sea School was in San Diego, California.
And you're glad you went that route?
I'm glad I went that route,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. Yeah, this is the cruise book from 1961, our Westpac cruise book, for about 8 months out there. Me at the top of Victoria's Peak in Hong Kong in 61.
That was on your first tour?
First tour. This is our deployment schedule for the 1961 cruise out of Alameda Naval Air Station in California beginning February 15th, and we got home the 28th of September. This is the cruise book from 1962 in the Far East. This is the 1962 Far East cruise schedule, where we left Alameda Naval Air Station on April 6th and returned October 20th, 1962. Me at Camp Pendleton, probably in 64, playing handball. This is a picture of the USS Midway out at sea, and it looks like it's probably coming into port, is my guess, with the Marines out front and the sailors all along the side of the ship. The USS Midway is now a museum in San Diego, California. It had last few years, except for when COVID hit, they've had well over 1 million people visit the museum. This is Charlene and myself, and it's July 2nd, 2012.
Now, were you able to go all through the ship and show her like your sleeping quarters and such?
I was able to get her, well, I don't know if I was this year, but we did at one time get down into the Marine quarters. on the ship just to look around. They have not been redone, you know, but because I was on the ship and a Marine there, they took me down there just to let me see it.
Awesome.
Wasn't open to the public. This is my 17-year-old uncle, my mom's brother, that died in the Battle of Midway on the USS Hammond. His ship was protecting and offloading injured sailors from the Yorktown. I also have this picture as a plaque in Fredericksburg, Texas, at the Museum of the Pacific. I carry him on my back at a lot of the military runs that they have, or like Memorial Day at the Boulder, at the Bataan Memorial Death March in White Sands, New Mexico, and various other 5Ks.
Wow.
My morale booster.
Yeah.
And kick in the pants. Oh, this is my dress blue uniform. I've had it altered, but I still can't get into it.
No.
The jacket is just a little too small of all things, you know?
Yeah.
Who would have thought? I can get the pants altered enough to get them on, but not the jacket.
Well, they say those clothes shrink over the years.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, these are the dress greens. Ooh, yep. And the tropical shirt that you wear generally with the dress greens. And my ribbons and rifle and marksmanship pistol medal. Ended up corporal for a couple of months before I got out.
Very nice.
Okay, this is the flag of Kenny McMahon's, my uncle that died in the Battle of Midway. And also here is the letter from President Roosevelt thanking him for his service, and a flag with a picture of a stream that I think came with the letter, but I'm not sure. And then this bookcase just has a lot of life items, so to speak. You know, from marathons to grandkids to trips to Europe to all kinds of vacations that we've had. Down here in the little box to the left is my wife's things from the funeral, and some books that I've read over the years. A few steins from Germany that I've been given or have picked up over the years. So just a bunch of little artifacts.
Yeah. A lot of life on that shelf.
Yeah,
Bookshelf.
there certainly is. Thank you for, and over here we've got medals from all of our runs. My wife's and mine.
Oh, she ran as well.
Oh yeah,
Yeah?
yeah. She did 10Ks with me, and she did the first Fortitude here in Fort Collins, and she did Boulder too.
Wow.
Yeah, so she was by my side a lot.
Hmm.